Okay. Is this one connected to the Wi-Fi yet? No. Just in case we need to look up things. Well, I guess we have yours.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I was just about to ask, where's yours?
Shall we begin?
We shall. Hi, and welcome to the Grannon Podcast. That's not what it's called.
It's called First Draft Films from Indie to Hollywood.
Yep, that's it. I should remember that. I kind of came up with that. Whether you're watching, listening, or whatever. I don't know if there's another option there. But today,
Watching and not listening? That would be weird.
That would be weird.
Please don't do that. Just stare at our faces.
What about deaf people, Kate?
Well... Should we really closed caption this whole thing?
I don't know.
If you want to, go ahead.
Is that a lot of work?
Yes.
Oh.
I mean, unless there's some auto-transcribe button that Resolve has that I haven't found yet. Which I wouldn't be surprised. Things like that are becoming more popular.
I mean, I figured with as terrible as YouTube captions usually are, that it was auto-done.
I mean, it might be. But I don't like captions, so I don't turn them on.
Yeah, I don't either. They're usually terrible. Although sometimes they're really funny.
They're just distracting. I'd rather watch like what's actually going on versus words. I can see words any day. I can't always see that. So what are we going to talk about, Brooke?
What did I send you this afternoon?
You sent me some stuff and things.
Stuff and things.
What?
That's what we're talking about today. Stuff and things.
Yes, stuff and things. Join us for conversations about stuff and things. Okay, what are we actually talking about?
We're actually talking about basically how to make a movie. The 3 stages of movie making traditionally. I don't know, when it comes down to it, I really feel like there's no wrong way to make a movie. Or right way, however you want to phrase that. Let's go through the stages just so everyone listening knows kind of like what we're going to be talking about.
Okay.
Most of you probably know this already, but there are really 3 basic phases to filmmaking: pre-production, production, and post-production. Pretty simple. It's really just like 3 words.
I'd say the essence of pre-production in a nutshell is just making everything as easy as possible on the day or days that you actually do shoot. Planning, logistics, organizing. You could count writing your script as pre-production, but usually that happens officially after your script is already written.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, so technically there's 4 stages, and that's like pre-production where you're like writing your script and stuff.
So planning out that if you're doing storyboarding, shot lists, putting together schedules, figuring out what you're going to feed your people, all that kind of logistical stuff. It's also on the creative side too. Designing costumes and stuff like that could be, and like costume try-ons and stuff like that is all pre-production as well.
Honestly, storyboarding, one of the most creative processes other than writing in the entire filmmaking process. Storyboarding is often overlooked, I think, especially in smaller films. People think, oh, I wrote a script, I'll make a shot list and go shoot it. But if you don't storyboard, you're missing out on essentially imagining what each camera shot, every single thing you're going to see, you're missing out on imagining what that's going to look like. And so when it comes to production day, you could spend hours upon hours just trying to figure out like what is this going to look like, and then you're wasting everyone's time when you could have done that weeks or months earlier.
And I think the reason why people don't do it is because it takes so much work. When I was a kid, I didn't even know it existed, and I'd spend like a lot of time figuring out what my angles were and like all of that stuff. But it is time consuming, like really time consuming.
You also have to know like about cameras and camera angles and how cameras work and how lighting works and a little bit about blocking of actors. I remember I storyboarded a script ages ago. I was in high school or something. I got these little like 3x5 cards and started drawing stick figures, and I didn't really know anything about cameras, and I've looked back on those within the last couple years, and I just like shook my head like, oh, I had no idea what I was doing. It was bad.
And that's why I usually do it with your DP, because I know when we've done storyboarding on I think 2 projects, Yeah, we storyboarded Burning Pile, and we storyboarded Brand New Surgery Suit. And especially with Brand New Surgery Suit, Trevor, our DP cinematographer, same difference. Trevor spent literal hours storyboarding, and he's an amazing artist anyway. We should have Trevor on here to talk about this.
We should.
So we'll try to not go super in-depth on storyboarding. We'll save that for if he wants to be on the podcast, which I hope he does. That would be really fun. Yeah, storyboarding, it is time-consuming, but it just saves so much time and work on the actual production day, and just frees you up to do actually the things that you need to do on production day. Like I opened with, the whole point of pre-production is just what can I do now that I won't have to do then, and just setting myself up for success, setting the team up for success.
Yeah,
whatever that may be, because it may be a simple shoot, maybe a complicated shoot, but whatever you do, like planning out in advance.
Yeah, I really feel like one of the major points of pre-production is simply to reduce the time spent with actors, which sounds a little like an oxymoron, but you don't want to be paying your actors, or if you're not paying your actors, you don't want to be wasting their time in general with the crew, or even just like 2 people on the crew figuring out like what's going on and leaving everyone else just waiting for hours. It's not good.
No. And we've done that before.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I think everybody goes through that at some point. Just because logistics are hard. And unfortunately, that's kind of one of the things you have to learn through trial and error.
Yeah.
I mean, unless somebody had come along and specifically told me, don't do that. Which here we're telling you, don't do that.
Don't do that.
But you might anyway. It's up to you.
Yeah. Well, and even if we knew not to do that, there would definitely be some element of that waiting on production day, because productions, like you said, it's a learning experience. And even if you're told everything, like what to do exactly, you know, like a film school graduate, they know in theory everything that they need to do. But when it comes to production day, things happen. And you know, you just have to learn through that experience.
Yeah. Setting up the set and just getting your equipment ready and all of that just takes time. Who knows? Somebody's tooth might get kicked out like the night before shooting, and then actors are going to be late. True story that actually happened to one of our actors during the not the drama we expected shoot.
Yeah, anything can happen. I mean, we've had equipment break on set. We've had both our lead actors cancel within 48 hours of a shoot. That was crazy. Ugh. But it all worked out for the better. We managed to pull something off in spite of that, which I think is really what it takes to be a filmmaker, you know, overcoming those challenges and bringing out at least halfway decent product anyways. And that kind of reminds me of how you and I sometimes have different ways of handling things. Like if we're coming to an obstacle, I'll be like, don't worry, Brooke, we'll just figure it out. And you're like, but we need to figure it out now. I stress about the opposite things. So I can't think of a specific example, but I don't know. It amuses me. One will come to me eventually. Yeah. Yeah. Anytime like something happens, I'm like, oh my gosh, we have to figure everything out now. And I've been learning not to do that. But yeah, that's really my go-to is like something happens and I'm like, we have to figure this out right now. And Kate's just like, nah, it'll be fine. It'll work itself out. It is. She's usually right. So production day. What is production day like? Did we cover everything? You usually have to wake up early. Oh my gosh. Usually. Yeah. We skipped over so much stuff in pre-production, like cast and crew, budget, paperwork, shot list, schedule, locations. There's a lot that goes into pre-production. We could have a whole podcast episode about just that. If you don't have reliable, motivated people, then it can take forever to get anything ready. That is so true. Yeah. Yeah, if you're not working with people who are actually dedicated to what you're doing, then you're not going to have a good time. Yeah. Yeah, so production. Before you begin production, make sure you've gone through a successful pre-production. Very important, as we were just talking about. It's a lot of work, but set yourself up for success. Yeah. Makes it easier in the long run. Yeah. Poor planning is one of the major causes of a failed or bad production day. Yeah. You know, just not knowing what you're doing or where you're going to be or anything like that. I wrote down that the first step of production is review. You know, make sure your pre-production planning went well, your cast and crew are all on the same page, send out reminder emails or texts, double check the schedule, contact your locations. The last thing you want is for someone to forget and not show up, or you get to location and they're like, what, that's today, but I'm leaving for Hawaii or something, and you're like, that didn't happen. That's just an example.
Also, fair disclosure, we are not trying to say that we are the best at doing any of these things. Those of you who have worked with us on any film project will know that that is not the case.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what we can promise you is that we're going to be leveling up even incrementally project to project. And this is a reminder for us too, for our ideal of how things should go. So we're coming at this with humility.
Yeah. Most of these things we're talking about are things that we've learned through experience.
Yep.
Anyways, production day. After you've gone through everything, you want to make sure that you have food. That is like the probably second most important thing on any production set is food. More important than your cast, crew, script, anything. Feed your people.
Mm-hmm. And bring them water if you're filming in the desert for 4 hours.
Yeah, so much water. So much water. Even if it's just like, a veggie tray and some tacos, give them something.
Yep.
They will be grumpy if you don't.
Yes.
And then you film your movie. You've done pretty much all the hard work in pre-production. So now you get to just have fun, enjoy being on set, direct your actors, eat good, hopefully good food.
Mm-hmm. The thing that I find most challenging on production day is delegating. Mm-hmm. Not that I don't want to delegate, but that I'm still learning how. Because it's so easy to just be, okay, I'm just going to set up everything just the way I want it to, versus adequately communicating everything to the crew to be like, can you do this and this and the other thing? And also sometimes it's hard. Like when we were there with Not the Drama We Expected, we'd been in that building, but for some of them it had been years since they were in that building, in the gym building. So we didn't know exactly where we were going to put the fake trees and the everything. So some of it with that, ideally would have figured that out sooner with our location. Yeah. So it took longer day of, especially, we were hauling trees around for like an hour.
So many trees.
All the trees?
All the time. I don't think anyone gets that.
We're so funny. Oh, if they follow our Instagram, they will remember from like April.
You let us know. Do you remember? Delegating is definitely hard when you're on production. For me, I usually have been, the role of producer. So that comes with a lot of things like making sure everyone's there, making sure communication is in order, scheduling, food, all the behind the scenes details, mostly money. Honestly, that's one of the major parts of being a producer. So when I'm on set, I'm always like trying to put out these little fires when I usually don't need to. I really should delegate those more. That's been a strong learning process there.
I do want to say this. I know a lot of filmmakers who really struggle with production, with actually enjoying production day. With one exception, of all the days of shooting in my entire life, I've enjoyed production day. And the one exception was because I was feeling sick and I was exhausted at the end of the day, and we'd been filming for like 12 hours.
So who doesn't like production day? You don't have to name names or anything, but like, I guess more why don't they?
I've heard people say it can be stressful and you're like worrying about the details.
Yeah.
And you're then being caught up in making sure that everything turns out right. But for me, I guess I can do that and enjoy it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it is stressful being on a set and, being in charge. Like, everything comes back to you. But that's honest.
I still love it.
Yeah.
Like literally, that is my favorite. Like, that and editing, like, once I'm, like, in the swing of things, editing are my favorite aspects. Like, my favorite times of filmmaking.
Yeah.
You can sit around, like, doing paperwork for hours beforehand, and that's, like, eh.
That's my favorite. My second favorite. I like production day the best.
Yeah.
But, I don't know, there's just something so special about being on a set, behind the cameras or in front of the cameras, being with the actors and the crew. There's a real magic there.
Yeah.
And I have never felt it anywhere else. I've done theater for many years, but that's a different kind of magic. Movie magic is a real thing.
Yeah.
And it's more than just CGI. I don't know how else to describe it. If you haven't been on a set, you just won't get it, I guess.
Yeah. And that's why I love watching behind the scenes, because the bittersweetness of production day is that that's never going to happen again. You're never going to do the exact same thing with the exact same people. And it's a time capsule in a way. Like, literally, some of the movies that I filmed as a kid, I filmed in locations that literally don't exist anymore. Old orchards that have since been bulldozed and turned into houses, or little areas of desert that are now somebody's driveway. Places that literally don't exist now in 2023 did exist like 12 years ago or 13 years ago when I was filming with my sisters. And it just makes it really special for some reason. Ultimately, production day is the tangibility. I don't know which one is the actual word. Tangibility, because movies are great, but it's not like you can actually touch and actually interact with them. But on that day, like, you're hands-on, you're doing all the things. It's not just like looking at a computer screen.
Yeah, I think if I were to try and define that magic that I was mentioning earlier, it would be like you're in a movie. You can watch it and you can get the visual and audio stimuli, but being there, you get the smells and the tastes and the feel of it too. And it's really like being in a movie, in the world of the movie sometimes. It's really cool.
Especially if you're on really cool sets. Oh my gosh. Which I'm excited to do in the future. I haven't done a whole lot of.
Yeah. I mean, we've had some cool ones, but they're all very real. We haven't delved into fantasy really at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, really, that's the only thing to production is food and shooting. Mm-hmm. So that leaves post-production. There is a lot that goes into post-production, but not nearly as much as pre-production. That's the biggest and probably usually the longest
in my experience, often post-production is the longest, unless you have a hard deadline like we did with not what we ever previously thought we had the capacity for.
Right.
That was like a 5-week turnaround, which was insane. We've never done that before or since.
Post-production can definitely.
Palm Springs, but
well, that's different. Yeah. I don't know, but pre-production though, I guess including the writing of it, that would take the longest.
Yeah,
if you don't include the writing of it, pre-production can go pretty quick. So post-production, that includes editing. I mean, that's not really all. There's editing, there's all the things that fall under editing, like sound and coloring and all that fun stuff, which we can dive into. And then distribution, that's kind of major. Marketing, advertising, that's... that all falls into the post-production category.
And we haven't really ran marketing or advertising campaigns.
Not yet.
For our movies.
No.
And we've done no distribution outside of YouTube.
Yeah.
YouTube, etc.
We'll figure that out here soon. So editing. That's really the bulk of post-production. You get all your footage, do stuff to it. Kate does all the editing. So
no, you've been editing too.
I have, but
yeah. I remember you were like, I want to learn to edit because I don't know how. I was like, it's just easy. You just do this, and you were like, oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, you just do the things.
I was trained in Premiere Pro, and DaVinci Resolve is pretty much the same. That's what we use now as DaVinci Resolve, and it is superior. I don't like Adobe products.
I will say Adobe Audition is a little more detailed than DaVinci Resolve Fairlight, which is Resolve's audio editing interface. Because I use Audition at work, and there are some features there that are like really just convenient shortcuts to things that it takes me longer to do in Resolve, just because of interface is different. Either that or I just don't know it well enough yet, which is also probably true.
Yeah, we also don't have the studio version yet, which might make a difference. There is a free version of Resolve if you're looking for some good editing software that isn't Windows Movie Maker. Well, that isn't good editing software anyways, but...
I literally couldn't get that to work when I first tried to...
It hasn't worked since 2012.
This was before 2012 when I tried to make it work.
So why don't you tell us just a little bit about how you start editing? So as soon as production's done, what happens?
Well, you gather all your footage off your SD cards and you get it onto your computer, and you should back it up. We, until the last few months, didn't actually have an external hard drive to back up everything onto. Now we do. And that just brings huge peace of mind, because if you're dealing with dozens and dozens of gigs or hundreds or more dozens of gigs of footage, and if you don't back it up, then it's nerve-wracking to do anything. But I don't delete anything off the SD cards until it's kind of in 3 places, or unless I need to clear them off immediately, or if we're filming the next day. But you gather it all, then you make your folders, and I've experimented with different methods of labeling my footage over the years. When I did Whatever It Takes, I kind of inconveniently labeled it by the date that we shot. Ooh. Which was very unuseful for everybody except me. I should have done it by scene. But it was August 12th, September 1st, and everybody looking at that would be like, what the heck is this?
That's where a good, what are those called? like a clapboard. Is that what it's called?
Slate.
That's where a good slate comes in, because you can have all that info on the slate and then just start rolling on that. So you always have all that information on the like thumbnails when you upload the files.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we need to do. Before we start rolling, we put the slate in front of the camera, and then we start rolling, and then we clap, and then we go.
Yep. And we have done that at some point, but sometimes we forget to do it.
Yeah.
We forgot to do it.
It's easy to forget when it's a smaller project, even though it's still important.
And then once you've done that, you gather it you put it into your editing software, whatever that process is. For DaVinci Resolve, you bring it into the media page, and then you can make folders, or they're called bins in Resolve, and that's where I've mostly labeled like scene 1, scene 2, and scene 3, and so on. And you can make folders for like whatever you want. If you want to put all your music in one folder, audio clips, or I've found it easier if I'm using external mics plus camera and then lining up that, if that makes sense. Mics plus camera footage, just putting everything in the same scene versus dividing out the video and the audio just saves a step. And then once you're there, then your assembly cut is just putting all the clips in order, which depending on the project may be more or less straightforward. That's another way storyboarding comes in super handy. And with some projects, there's a lot more give and take, a lot more freedom. Like our Not What We Expected series, we had the interviews and the footage, and the storyline was more or less straightforward of what was happening, but we jumbled some stuff around on purpose, and we just cut up the interviews and put them in where it worked, but we didn't plan where those were going to go necessarily. Mm-hmm. And so once you do your assembly cut, then you just keep refining from there. Assembly cut is just lining everything up, and your rough cut is like a rough draft. I keep calling it a rough draft, which is funny because I came from writing, I guess.
Yeah.
You just keep refining from there. And I think people say that audio is supposed to be the last thing you do, but I usually have to do, at least to some extent, audio alongside of that, aside from, music and things like that. Because
yeah, I think they're referring to more like music and Foley
rather
than just basic audio.
Because you have to make sure everything's lined up and everything travels together where it's supposed to go.
Oh man, imagine lining up all the video clips and then trying to match the audio to all those instead of just doing it at the same time.
If you do that, please don't. I don't know why you would, but please don't. That does not sound like a good time.
No.
And coloring usually comes pretty late in the process. So do you want to tell us a little bit about color grading? Because I am not a color grader.
Yeah, so I learned about color grading for our very first project, Palm Springs of Washington. That was like a competition thing. Submit your film to this short film competition type thing, not a festival. And so we finished production like less than a week before the due date. Kate, you told me about this guy on YouTube who taught coloring.
Kazi, yeah.
Yeah, and I started watching some videos and in 3 days became an expert. No, I did not. I actually really hate the color grade for Palm Springs. Every time I watch it, I cringe.
Okay, but the shot of the kids running down the sidewalk.
That's cute, but
it's beautiful. It's my favorite shot in the entire movie was the kids running down the sidewalk. Yeah. Away from the camera.
Yeah. But anyway, so I just kept watching videos and just kept learning and practicing. With each project, I feel I get better and better. And it really comes down to like not overdoing it. Because in the DaVinci Resolve color page, you can completely change almost everything. You can change someone's hair color without affecting the rest of the image sometimes. You can remove or add clouds just by adjusting the contrast, It's a very powerful tool and very easy to overdo. So that's something I had to learn eventually, is not to overdo it. And then there's really 2 phases to coloring. It's color correcting and color grading. Correcting is just bringing all the footage back to
balancing it kind of?
Yeah, basically bringing it to real life. So usually footage comes in pretty flat. There's not a lot of contrast, not a lot of saturation, but all the data, it's all there. And so you can like stretch it out and bring back the contrast and the colors, and that's color correcting. Just bringing it back to real life, to what it looked like on set. From there, you can grade it and make it cooler.
Not every project requires it.
Yeah,
either.
No, not every project. Like I said, with Palm Springs, I wish I'd left it mostly normal. I tried to do all these fancy things, making it cool or warm or all these things, and it really didn't need it. And that's one thing I learned for the next project, which was Not What We Expected. And so with Not What We Expected, I just tried to keep it simple, Some of the camera settings were a little odd just because we didn't know on the day of shooting, you know? And so I was trying to, you know, fix those, make all 3 cameras look the same. And that was a challenge. And then, you know, just each project, I just learn a little bit more. This goes for pretty much everything in post, but like, you know, when it comes to coloring, it's really important to get your camera settings right on production day. Because if your camera settings are like super high contrast, super saturated, your project's not going to look that great usually. Mm-hmm. It's going to be really hard to color correct and color grade. You're usually going to end up over contrasted and oversaturated, and it's easier to stretch things out than it is to condense them. So when in doubt, flatten your image as much as possible on production day, unless you have a really nice camera that kind of does that for you, films in RAW or something.
Our new camera's going to film in RAW.
I'm so excited.
Quick note about color grading. There are also ways that you can redeem things, because I'm thinking of one particular project where we uploaded all the footage and we realized that the exposure was really high on everything. So we're like, ugh, what do we do with this? But we just worked, Brooke just
project was
worked.
That?
It was Burning Pile.
Oh,
and because we were filming outside in the snow, we just didn't know, you know.
Snow is very reflective.
Snow is super bright, and even though it was cloudy, like everything was like reflective
mm-hmm.
and bright, and we just like took the footage and I'm like, oh no. But it turned out beautiful, I think, and Brooke was able to just kind of use that to our advantage almost in a way that we weren't planning for or were expecting. And it looks beautiful now. It's just stunning. So that just like all that to say, if you make a mistake with that, I mean, give yourself grace and find a way to make it something unique and beautiful and cool, even if it's not what you were planning on doing.
Yeah, that kind of takes it back to like being a producer, being a filmmaker, and like being able to adapt.
Yes, adaptability is key.
Oh my gosh, everything's gonna go wrong when you make a movie. Everything, Murphy's Law or whatever. So you have to like Kate said, you have to work with it. You have to like figure out how to use it to your advantage. Like we weren't able to do reshoots for Burning Pile. That was more of a spontaneous project. We've had it planned for a little while, but the actual filming of it was like, oh, this is the weekend. There's snow. Let's go. Yeah. And so to do a reshoot wasn't really possible. We made it work. We pulled in the overexposure into kind of the overall vibe of it, and it kind of worked. Yeah.
And going back to the more, I don't know if this is a philosophical side or what, but stressing yourself out and freaking out about things literally does not help. And I think for me, being calm about things comes out a little more naturally than it does to a lot of people. And I really can't tell you how that's the case other than the grace of God. But just really, there's no need to freak out about anything. You're just going to stress your brain out. You're going to go into fight or flight mode or whatever the case may be. But if you're calm and relaxed, then you'll be able to think of your solutions faster than if you're panicking. And I understand panic is a normal reaction, that happens, but you will be okay.
Yeah.
And so will your project.
If I could give a new filmmaker one single piece of advice, it would simply be like, things will go wrong.
Yeah. Go with the flow.
Take a breath. Everything will be fine. You will figure it out. Just take a breath. Don't panic in the moment. You will figure it out. Yeah. It'll be fine.
You got this.
Well, we've talked about editing. We haven't really talked about distribution or marketing or anything. We don't have a lot of experience in that yet. Yeah. I know in theory, you send your movies to the theaters. You send your shows to cable or streaming. But that's not always realistic for everyone. All our projects are on YouTube. Pretty much everyone we know and work with, all their projects are on YouTube. YouTube's great for some things.
Not making money.
not really for making money, no. Yeah, eventually we'll get into the marketing and the distribution aspects of filmmaking. If you're a filmmaker and you don't really know how to get started in that, but you want your movies in more places than just YouTube, festivals. Festivals are a fantastic way for indie filmmakers, more low budget type stuff.
But you have to be careful with them too, especially because most of them want a fee, and a lot of them are just kind of like money making methods for the people who organize them.
Yeah. do your research.
So do your research and don't necessarily expect anything from that other than like, oh, I'm just gonna put this in and see what happens. Mm-hmm. We've only done that like a couple times. I guess the competition was a little bit different, but
we haven't done any official festivals, but we've done a couple smaller other things. So
oh, there's that one festival coming up.
Oh yeah,
next month.
That's
or
right.
At the end of the
That's
month.
like the first annual.
Yeah, the Under the Valley. It's a local Yakima Film
That's
Festival.
right.
This is its first year, so it'll be cool to see what comes of that.
Yeah, we entered our very short film. I don't even know if it's a film. It
is a film, yeah.
Okay,
Ideas.
it's 30 seconds long.
It's an experimental film.
It's experimental.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 30 seconds long. It's called Ideas. It's up on YouTube. Is it on TikTok?
It is, and it's one of our most viewed.
Yeah, it's because it's great. It's great. It's like probably my favorite movie we've ever made. Yeah, you can check that out now on YouTube or TikTok, and it'll be in the Under the Valley Film Festival.
Yeah. One other thing about marketing, and this was something that I would love to do next time, but I remember hearing on the Doom Productions podcast their strategy for when they released Video Carnage, and for the month leading up, they, people often talk about create the buzz and the hype for your movie, but like it's likely that people are going to forget about it. Like obviously the diehard fans, like your hard support is going to be like, oh yeah, like I'm going to watch it on opening day when it comes out, but not everybody, most people aren't going to be like that. Your undecideds, your soft support or whatever, they're not going to care as much.
Yeah.
So what they did was for like a solid month, they were constantly like putting out ads like our movie's out now, you can watch it now after, and then there was like a huge momentum immediately upon release versus a bunch of people waiting for it to come out.
Yeah.
So I think next film we make, we should do that.
I agree.
Just like blasting social media with like, go watch our movie.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe even getting some paid ads out there. But yeah, honestly, that's one of the things, like I'll see ads for movies and it'll be like coming in a year and I'm like, well, I'm going to forget about that. And like not even on purpose. Like that happens all the time. I'll see an ad or a trailer and like, oh, that looks so cool. Is it coming out soon? No. And then I forget about it, and then it comes out and 3 months pass and people are like, oh, have you seen this movie? And I'm like, no, is that out yet? And they're like, yeah, it came out a few months ago. And I'm like, wow, I really wanted to go see that in theaters.
Yeah.
So that's what I have to say about advertising.
Yeah.
And really that's the whole process of film. That took a long time. We're going to have to next episode talk more about the three, I don't know even know if there's three, the different styles of filmmaking, from indie to pro to from indie to Hollywood to just like guerrilla filmmaking, and that's gonna be a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Well, I guess that about wraps it up. So thank you so much for watching or listening.
Yeah. Well, before that, I just want to say that every stage of filmmaking is awesome and it is all important. And the thing, I wanted to bring this up earlier, but I forgot. So this is a little bit of a going backwards, but
be a treat for those who stayed till the end.
There you go. Yeah. So especially for me especially before Granite was incorporated, when it was just me and doing all the pre-production and all the post-production. For Tatooine Trouble, for instance, post-production was so hard, specifically because of the special effects aspect and like having to do the dubbing and everything, that like I knew, and I still believe this to the day, that if it hadn't been for everybody involved, I would have just tabled it basically permanently.
That would
because
so sad.
I know it would have been, but the only reason I kept going was, even though it was such a drag and such a slog with having to learn the special effects and just all the delays that happened, like either that were my fault or that were out of my control, it was just like, man, but I was not going to leave like the 30 or whatever people who were involved in that project, just leave them hanging and be like, oh yeah, it never happened. It's like, no, you did not go out in the sun in the desert for 4 hours with no water and no shade just to have nothing come of it. That is not what happened. And I'm still super, super proud of that movie and of everybody who did that movie. Because it was, desert for 4 hours or no desert for 4 hours. It was a blast. And it was amazing. And it was super fun. And I look back on that as one of the funnest shoots.
Yeah,
so
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I look forward to filming 29 Trouble.
Yes.
Being out in the hot desert.
The dunes.
That actually sounds awful, but it's that movie magic, I look forward to being on Planet 29.
Yes.
Join us next week, next month. I don't know how often this releases yet.
We talked about 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yeah. Join us next episode, probably in 2 weeks, to hear us talk about how to make a movie. We've talked about the theory of it, but yeah, we'll go a little bit more into the different processes in making a movie, from indie films to Hollywood films.
Yeah. All right. Take care, guys.
Make sure to subscribe or like or whatever you do on this platform. Thank you so much for watching.
Yes. No, it's like this. This is what the kids are doing these days. They like bend their fingers. Yeah, like this.
Okay.
Yeah. Take care, guys.